Okay. For those of you that are joined, thank you so much. It's fixed now. Unfortunately, I probably lost everybody. Now that it finally works, I have probably lost everyone. So that is my fault. Now I had to reshare everything. Finally works. Let's go ahead and get that squared away. Now it works. Now it works. Now the video works. Now the audio works. Sorry about that, people. Oh my gosh. Comedy of errors. Did a great job sharing, did a great job doing everything. All right, now we're back. And I should be all should be able to hear me now. It should work. Those of you that have hung in there, I really appreciate it. Um, gosh, that is what I get for trying to do something different with my camera. That's my fault. So, thanks everybody for hanging in there. Thanks everybody for joining now. And I'll have to delete that one that I messed up on. Delete from both. And I'm just going to share this to Facebook real quick so everyone can see that on Facebook story. Share that also. All right, so let's chat about it. Killers of the Flower Moon. I tried showing the trailer in my last stream. I think because it's a YouTube video, they blocked it out. You could hear the audio, but you couldn't see it. So we'll have to watch that another time. I'll download it prior to. But Killers of the Flower Moon, I wanted to watch that trailer primarily because to refresh everyone's memory what it was about. Now, I flip flopped. I went from I'm not gonna like it because it's the source material is written by a non-native person. The director is a non-native person. It has predominantly a non-native cast. The focus is from the POV of non-natives, so it's not going to be that great. And then leading up to the movie, there was a lot of support from Osage people and native people that have seen it prior to the movie being released. And then my tune changed, and I was very different. I had a different stance, completely different. Did a 180 and then I saw it, and then I was like, "Well, I think my suspicions were right." So let's talk about it. You have questions, comments, put it in the chat. But my overall reaction was just it wasn't that great of a movie. I mean, I think it was a good movie. I think from a storytelling standpoint, probably middle of the road for me. It wasn't that mind blowing. It was just natives in the past, natives in the 1920s, and I just couldn't not see that. I think because I that's played out to me. I feel like that's been done enough. I don't need to see natives that have already come and gone. I feel like you can make it as accurate as you want to be, but the history of native people in this country, I mean, I don't need to see it on camera. Um, I encourage everyone to go watch it. It's a good movie. I truly think it is. It's important for people to know that have no idea. But I think if you are familiar with any native history, it's just one feather in the cap of no, not feather cap. It's just another story in the saga of native people being taken advantage of and having the law against them. In this case, it has a more of a promising ending because the FBI is formed during this time, and the FBI comes and uncovers the what's referred to as the epidemic of the Osage individuals being killed. And it really was a look at how bad these people are movie, referring to the individuals that were trying to take the head rights of the oil from the Osage people. And the movie starts out very much like the Beverly Hillbillies intro. If you've ever seen the Beverly Hillbillies, when Jed Clampett shoots the oil, shoots the ground, and then that oil comes bubbling out, and then all of a sudden they move to Beverly Hills. That's basically how the first 15 minutes of Killers of the Flower Moon is. They start out with no idea there's oil below them. What's interesting though, and I'm glad they mentioned it, is they didn't mention this in the movie, but in the book, and I started reading that one. And historically, the Osage ancestral homeland is in Kansas area. They were moved to Oklahoma. A lot of natives were moved to Oklahoma, and because it was desolate, there wasn't shit there, and so they were like, "Yeah, put them where the land that nobody wants." And of course, they wanted it after they found out there was oil beneath it, and that's when it became a controversy. But it was very much like a Beverly Hillbillies opening of the movie because they find oil, and what do? They go crazy with the money. They go and buy lavish clothes, they buy mink fur coats, they buy the best vehicles, they buy big houses, they buy expensive jewelry, and rags to riches story. But it's just the way it's shot. It just didn't feel. It felt very Beverly Hillbillies to me. That wasn't the intention, but that's all I could think of when I saw that. And what I really didn't like about the movie is it intentionally displays the ignorance and how babe in the woods native people were. I get it. It's true. It might have been true. You give people who've never had money before the chance to have the most wealth that anyone could ever spend. But but I didn't need to see that on screen personally. I didn't need to see that. What is the purpose now when you have native people today thriving, living, who have cultures and language in the year 2023, and you're just going to go and say, "Hey, look at how dumb these Indians were. Look at how dependent they were on people because they didn't understand land, language, they didn't understand law. Look at how easy they are to be like hoodwinked. They could have the wool pulled over their eyes so easy." The story was, look at how cunning and smart these white people are. Look at how dumb these Indians were. And it, once again, all true. But that's just the way it was framed. And it wasn't a white savior movie because um I think a white savior movie implies that, like, I don't know, you can see it that way. I could see why it'd be a white savior movie, but this is true story. So it's not like for the purposes of driving the narrative, for making the white person the protagonist. It's just the way the POV was in this. There were plenty of Osage people that went to bat for themselves. They tried to get the government to listen to their pleas. They knew that there were only so many things that they could do based on their situation, and so they tried. They went and exhausted their options, and eventually it worked out. They got the FBI to come. J. Edgar Hoover was put in charge of the FBI and sent out his minions out there, Jesse Plemons, and then everything got resolved by the end of the movie. But my gosh, like I just didn't need to see it personally. I just didn't need to see. Look at these poor rich Indians, and I have one big major qualm of you can tell who this movie was for. If you want to juxtapose these two scenes, on one hand you have, I'm talking about owl representation in movies. On one hand you have Reservation Dogs, and on the other hand you have Killers of the Flower Moon. In Reservation Dogs, Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm sorry, in Reservation Dogs, when the owl is shown in the TV show, the owl's eyes are blurred out. It's understood why the owl's eyes are blurred out, and it's not explained to anybody. It's like, hey, if you either get it or you don't. If you want to look into it, great. If you don't, fine. But there's just this illusion that owls looking at an owl is a bad thing. Even if you're non-native, you're like, why would they blur out the owl's eyes? That's weird. But we get it. We being native people. In Killers of the Flower Moon, the dying mother, Tantu Cardinal, in Osage, tells Lily Gladstone, "Hey, I just saw an owl. Remember, owls are bad omens for our people. Owl means somebody's going to die." And it's just like, yeah, no shit. You wouldn't say that. You would not say that. Like, you would just say, "Hey, I saw an owl in my dreams," and then everyone would just know. But that just to goes to show who the movie was made for. And it goes to the comments made by the Osage cultural consultant, that's not who this movie was made for. The movie wasn't made for Osage people. I would argue this movie is not even made for Native people. It's made for everybody else. I've shit on the movie up to this point. The one positive I will say is it it invokes curiosity, in my opinion. I think at the very least, people will be interested in what other atrocities have Native people come across. And for Native people, I don't need to see that on screen. I'm very well aware. I'm sure there are other races of people of just like, good God, like, have you made enough of those? Whether it's a slavery movie, a Holocaust movie, it's just like, okay, we get it. Like from the people who are descendants of those people portrayed in the movie. It's just like, all right, you drove the point home. I get it. And that's where I'm at with this one. I'm torn because the Osage story has never been told before, but frankly, I would have preferred this to be a documentary. But less people would have seen it. So it's a slippery slope for sure. I want to say another thing. I don't want to. I'm going to do a video on Killers of the Flower Moon, a podcast video on Killers of the Flower Moon, and I'll release a podcast. But one thing I really didn't like. So Jesse Plemons, Brendan Fraser, John Lithgow, they're in the movie from like the second half on. And Jesse Plemons is invited to every powwow for the rest of his life. Jesse Plemons was amazing in that. But Brendan Fraser and John Lithgow are lawyers in the film, and they are in the movie collectively no longer than Cara Jade Myers was in the movie. Cara Jade Myers, who plays Anna, who is Lily Gladstone's sister, Molly, in the movie, Cara Jade Myers should be getting nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. My opinion, I think even more so than Lily Gladstone. I think Lily Gladstone did a great job, but I really think that Cara Jade Myers should be nominated over. If you have to choose one or the other, I would say her. She kills it. Every scene that she's in, she's so captivating. She's just raw and real and presents so much pain, but also the resiliency of Native women. And that's what I really liked about Kara's character when she plays Anna. Um, Anna doesn't take any shit from anybody. And I love that. In a movie where it's like you're infantilizing Native people, Kara's character, Anna, just does not care. Like, she does not give a fuck. She will slap a white man. She will punch a white man in front of other white men and just like, go ahead, come at me, bro. And she just displays that tenacity that is more accurate than anything that I could see. And it was just refreshing and it was great. So I was hoping she would get some Oscar buzz, some Academy Award consideration, but we'll see what happens. But why I even brought that up? Brendan Fraser and John Lithgow collectively have less screen time than Cara Jade Myers. But when the movie ends, John Lithgow and Brendan Fraser's name is listed an entire screen before Cara Jade Myers and Tatanka Means, which to me says, "Hey, we took these native people's names into consideration, but this is a movie about the non-natives." So that's to me. You want to tell an Osage story with I don't think any of those actors were Osage with no Osage people in it. You want to have non-native people and native people who aren't Osage all speak Osage in the film and not put Osage people in it. I just feel like there's got to be there's Osage actors out there. I'm sure you know what they did. What they typically do is I bet there's a lot of Osage people in the background, and I bet the people that were speaking maybe at the council heads were the Osage, and that's probably about it. But they were like, okay, we'll appease you and we'll give you some roles, but the roles that are most impactful, we're gonna give those to people that we feel like deserve it. Not deserve it, but we're gonna give it to people that we want to give it to. And I don't know. I just didn't like some of that. I'm over watching movies about dead natives. But someone made a comment. For someone like me, I wasn't raised on the res and don't have many ties to my Comanche roots. But for me, movies like this help me see who our indigenous brothers and sisters were and are. And I can respect that. I'm just giving my opinion. It's okay to like this movie. It's okay to feel like this is a great movie. I'm just giving my opinion. I hope people know that. A few people came at me and who were native and just didn't like my opinion. and said like, "Hey, there's a lot of people, hardworking people that are native that were on this. You need to be respectful. You need to respect their hard work. I think this is a big win for Indian country." All those things can be true, and I can also not like the way that they portrayed natives in the film. There is nothing wrong with me saying like, "Hey, I didn't like it." Nothing at all, because you can still like it. I can see why individuals would like it. Lily Gladstone is fantastic. There's a let's go to my positives. Lily Gladstone was amazing. I think it's great for her because she's just going to lock up more work. Kara Jade Myers, she's going to lock up more work because of this. Tatanka Means kicked ass in this. He's going to lock up more work, and we're going to see him and her and more stuff moving forward. That's exciting. The casting overall of native people, despite my reservations, my reservations about not having Osage people in it, the casting was awesome. It was the most diverse cast I've seen for native people from a mainstream perspective. And I get it. And I think it's just new faces and new names that are and new talent that we're going to just continue to see. Yes, Tantu Cardinal was in there. If this movie was made 15 years ago, they would have put Wes Studi in it, Gary Farmer in it. They would have found a way to hire Graham Greene, Irene Bedard, and they probably would have hired Tantu Cardinal still. They would have just had that Rolodex of the same natives they keep recycling. And but this one wasn't like that. They brought new people in for people to see. Um, I think the good thing though, I will say, despite my feelings about the movie, Martin Scorsese is like an uncle for now. I think he's going to be an uncle for native people. Like he tried, he genuinely gave a shit. He genuinely wanted to get it right. But this is just the limits of like a non-native person trying to do something. Like there wasn't an executive producer, there wasn't any producers that were native. It was driven by non-native people, written and directed by non-native people. The source material is written by a non-native person. Like this is the limits of what it can look like, and that's okay. That's fine. I really just don't like the infantilization of native people in this movie. And while that might be true, I think that part of the history is just close the book on that. If you want to see that, watch a documentary. Don't watch a fictionalized retelling of history to purposely put a lens on a specific piece that you want to highlight, which is look at how bad these white people were at this time. Look at how terrible these Indians had it. Look at these poor Indians at this time and give no perspective about who these people are today. That was my biggest issue with the movie is it paints this picture in the 1920s of who the Osage people were, the atrocities committed against them, and gives no context or understanding of who they are today. It gives very little at the very end, but in no way does it say the Osage are still thriving today. The movie just ends with like a drum group, like people dancing around a drum. And I don't know. The last positive I will give it though is the wardrobes. I think the costume and design was fantastic. My opinion. It was interesting. Lily Gladstone's character wore a blanket her entire movie, basically draped around her. At first, I was like, "Is that a stereotype or something?" But in the book, that's apparently her style. Apparently, Molly wore a blanket. That was like how she always chose to go out. That was like her jacket. Never left the house without it, kind of thing. So I was okay. Well, someone made a comment. Someone Native All Stars. Yeah, talking about everyone, the Rolodex of Native people. So let's see. I wanted to see how the Osage got wealth. I think that's an important part that was missed. I agree. I agree. Like you can put two and two together. That's why I said it's very analogous to like the Beverly Hillbillies intro. When Jed Clampett shoots the ground, oil pops out of the ground. It sings that song, the tune of how they get all their money, moving to Beverly Hills. But I think in the movie would have just benefited more from focusing on the Osage. Another thing I didn't like when they talk about diabetes so much in the film, and like everyone, all the Osage have diabetes. They just talk about it. They don't even explain why they have diabetes. I feel like that should be told. You know why? Because that's a lens on the government. Um, I feel like that's a whole other movie. But that's important to tell too. Why do all the Osage people have diabetes in the movie? It's just alluded to. Oh, my sister has diabetes, but so and so has diabetes. Everybody has diabetes, and they just talk about it. Why? That's just reinforcing a stereotype about Native people today that's misinformed. Why do they have diabetes? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because the government purposely gave Native people food that was high in carbohydrates, high in starch, high in sugar on purpose, made them less of a nomadic culture, made them more sedentary. Said, hey, now you can occupy on this plot of land. You can no longer roam freely as you would like to, as you've done for time immemorial. And you continue to pump all of that uh, processed food into the communities, put them on food deserts, don't give them access to good running water, to good health care, to quality grocery stores. And then you perpetuate that throughout history, and we are where we are. But instead, it's like, oh my, everyone's diabetic. So I don't know, but that's me. That's my opinion. That's something I focused on, right or wrong, right or wrong. I think that was a focus. Um, and I just want to say something too about just native film in general. Before I pivot, well, somebody said, "Do you feel this movie could have been improved with an all native crew as far as writing is concerned?" Thank you for that comment. Someone had mentioned to me, I feel like if a native person had directed this movie, it would have been better. And my opinion on that really is a native person wouldn't have taken on this story. Given the all of the stories that could be told right now, all of the untold stories, telling the story, the retelling of a 1920s the Osage killing of the Flower Moon, Killers of the Flower Moon is not one of them. Like go like Tommy Orange, they're there. Go tell that story. That's a story that should be told. However you feel about Sherman Alexi's True Stories of a Part-Time Indian, like that was made into a book. His other book, he has another book called Flight. That should be a movie. Like there's plenty of native stories, native screenwrites, native playwrights out there that have native stories from a native perspective that talk about who we are today, or a reimagining of not even a reimagining, but a retelling of history from native POV. I think if a native person, an Osage person wanted to tell this story and it was from the POV of the Osage, I feel like that'd be a better movie. I think it's possible. It's just I just have the belief that a native person would not have chose the Killers of the Flower Moon to retell this story. I feel like they would have wrote it and based on Osage history and Osage stories and Osage perspective. So one of my favorite things about Reservation Dogs is they do not slow down the story to explain native. Yeah, exactly. They don't slow down anything. Here, they at times they pull the vehicle over to catch up the non-native audience to say, "Hey, here's what this is. Here's what this is. Here's why they do that." And I just hearing Leo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro speak Osage, it had me in stitches throughout the movie. I just couldn't get past it. I think because Robert De Niro is no longer Casino, um, Godfather, Goodfellas. That's not him anymore to me. He's Meet the Parents, Bad Grandpa. Like he's done too many bad movies after his amazing run um, for me to take him serious in that way. So it's really hard for me to see him like revert back to his roots when he's done so many just off the cuff movies. But I know he tried. I just don't know why. I just don't know why they did it. All right, I'm gonna say one thing about not about somebody speaking the language of a native group. This goes for Dark Winds. This goes for Killers of the Flower Moon. This goes for shit Yellowstone. I'm sure they speak some native language in Yellowstone. Let me just paint a scenario. So let's say Leo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, same people. Let's say they go and play a French movie and they say, "Okay, Leo and Robert, you two are going to speak French for half of your dialogue throughout the entire movie, even a quarter. And your French needs to be just as good, if not as good as the native speakers to pass as though you are able to speak French." That sound good? Can you do that? Like why would you even do that? You people who speak French are gonna be like, "That's not good French." That's a whose dialect is that? Hey, Leo, can you act like you've spoken Osage for the past 20, 15 years and pass it off as authentic? And we're gonna have other people in the movie who never spoke Osage in their life speak Osage and pass it off as authentic and genuine. Does that sound good? Yes, there are people who speak Osage, but that's beside the point. We don't want them on camera. We don't want them to be speaking these lines. I just want Osage spoken on camera. So can you just learn how to do it and just be close enough, just so it's believable? No, it's stupid. Wes Studi, when he got his honorary Oscar, um, one of the things that people really touted is like Wes Studi has spoken the most native languages out of anybody, any actor ever. He's spoken over 30 different native languages. I want to say it was 30 or 20. And I'm just like, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing to be proud of. That means that we compromised 20 different times. Wes Studi's Cherokee. In my opinion, he shouldn't speaking any language other than English and Cherokee. That's my opinion. Controversial. Go ahead and say I'm right or wrong, but to me that's why like it's just a this perpetuates the idea that Native people are a monolith. Hey, Ian, you're Navajo. You can speak Hopi, right? You can go speak Lakota on film. If someone hired me and said, "Hey, can you pass off as an Osage person and say this like two Osage sentences, even if I was a background person?" No, no. Why would I disrespect somebody who's Osage and try to even attempt to speak their language? I don't know their connection to their language. I don't have a connection to their culture. Why would I do that? Why would I even try? But that's where it yes, it's acting. So I get it. There's got to be a line somewhere. There's never going to be Osage people uh enough Osage people to fill the credits. I shouldn't say that. There is. That's just not feasible. My solution is not feasible. I get that. But I just don't understand why you even attempt it. Because the people who are from that community, they're just gonna giggle, and they're just gonna be like, "That's the best they could do? That what is that? What is he saying?" One question, do you feel like Dark Winds would have been better with authentic native speakers? I think that if you unless you're Navajo, you don't really care that much. I truly believe that. I think if you're not Navajo, you don't care as much. I think it looks authentic enough. And I think it's the same thing with the Osage in Killers of the Flower Moon. I think if you're not from that community, it doesn't matter enough. But given the history um, of just misrepresentation of native languages in cinema, I do not feel like it's their place to even try. That's my opinion. I just think you just leave it out. So someone made a comment. There are a lot of indigenous authors who should have their books adapted, like C. Grant Jones, Tommy Orange, maybe Rebecca Roanhorse. I agree. There's plenty of stories out there to have adapted screenplays to, for sure. Someone said, I feel like Dark Winds would have been better with native speakers. I think as a Navajo person, it certainly would have been better. I think it would have been less marketable, but I'm okay with that. That's why I'm okay with Dark Winds. It's like they're trying. It's whatever. I feel like they toned down the Navajo speaking in season 2. There still is, and but what's interesting about Dark Winds is there are actual Navajo people speaking Navajo at times, and then there are people who are not Navajo speaking Navajo. So that really highlights it for Navajo people. They're like, that guy's really Navajo. He knows what he's saying. I don't know what that guy's trying to say. And I just feel like I don't know, for Osage, I mean, what do you think of the language use in Killers of the Flower Moon? I'm positive nobody's saying, yeah, that sounds real and authentic. Just sounds like grandma, sounds like my mom, sounds like my dad. I just don't know why you try it. Especially in the 1920s when it's supposed to be like you're supposed to be ESL. That's supposed to be your English. English is supposed to be your second language at that point. Unless you went to a residential school where you like are bilingual or raised with both languages. So I don't know. Someone said I don't like the pan Indian trope or casting natives to represent tribes they're not from. It turns us into a monolith or perpetuates native stereotypes. I agree. It doesn't give us the identity that we're separate. There's over 560 federally recognized tribes in North America. That's excluding the ones in Canada, South America, Central America. It just blends us all together of like, hey, just put some feathers on them. Hey, just play some drums. Hey, just play some flute music ambiguously in the background, and let's call it good. So you're right. Someone said you're right. These words in Navajo that you don't say or they have sacredness, like a Navajo name. We don't say our names in public. It's for ceremonial purposes. Perfect, perfect example. There's just those nuances though that really what bothers me is like how can you make this story about the people that you're telling the story about and not respect their culture enough to even say like, hey, let's include them in this. For Navajo people, and this is a very much like a Bilagana non-native perspective of telling a story. Like, hey, I'm telling your story. Isn't that great? It's like, no, you shouldn't just be like have free reign over any story you want to tell. But I think that's what Scorsese probably came to the community with. And I'm sure, like I said, Scorsese was well intentioned. He really gave a shit. I see it. I see it in the way that people received him. I see it in how much care he exercised and the way he talked about the film. But I just didn't need it personally. I've been going on for Killers of the Flower Moon for a little bit. And there's more drunken Indians in this one. I didn't need to see another drunken Indian. I didn't need to see another alcoholic Indian on camera. All right, let's see what else did we talk about. I didn't watch the movie. Was it a white savior type movie? I don't think so. I can see how you would view it that way, but I don't think it was a white savior movie because the protagonist isn't the person. There isn't like a white knight coming in to save everybody. It technically isn't. There technically isn't resolution at the end of the movie, so it's not a white. No one's saved. I guess you got to be saved for it to be a white savior movie, and that's why I didn't like it. Like it doesn't. It just ends on like a look at this shitty situation these Osage people are in. Spoiler alert. Sorry, but that's how the book ends. Also, it's just like look how shitty it is for these people. That's why I say it's not a white savior movie. What did I think about the ending? I think the ending was an attempt at trying to say how difficult it is to tell this story. When Martin's standing on that stage at the end, it's not he just kind of like is reading Molly's obituary and just shows him melancholy or shows him really sad over it. But what I've liked I would like to have had a moment to say, here's who Osage people are today. Despite all of these atrocities, despite and also the fight for the head rights. That fight still exists today. Pioneer Woman, I don't know if you saw that post. Pioneer Woman, the lady who cooks, like, really unhealthy stuff, puts a bunch of butter, makes delicious food. Pioneer Woman, her family has, like, a crap ton of land in Oklahoma and got it because her family apparently she comes from a long line of undertakers, and in the 1920s, the undertakers would take head rights from Osage people when they would bring their dead to them. And so her family accumulated millions of dollars over the course of the past 100 years, money and land and head rights. And so now she's like in the controversy like stage or light, according to the article I read. But like talk about that. Talk about where the head rights are now. You just painted this picture of the past 3.5 hours of all of these native people getting their head rights taken from them. Talk about where that leaves them today. Talk about how you can get involved. Talk about where activism sits today. Talk about how you can write to your congressman and right these wrongs. Instead, it's just, man, it was really crappy what happened to those Indians. Makes me really sad. And that was it. That's what I thought of the ending. I just think it could have been more polished, more finished. I just don't like how it just left it as like, "Hey, these people are still here, but they're just here." I want to say another thing too, just about native work in general. Um, I feel like my job is to be fair, not fair. My job is to tell my opinion, and I feel like anytime you're in a critic space, you could be potentially pressured to sway your opinion one way or another based on the fact of just like favoritism. You can be too close to it that you can't really see the truth or a better representation of it. And I just think that there are times when I feel like there are native people that pressure me to like something because native people were involved in it, or because I know somebody that was involved with the film, or because someone likes me somewhat, or someone we've been cordial. I don't have an obligation to any of that. I think that's why honestly I try to not talk to people. I try to not talk to actors and directors, but I have to. But I try to not. I don't know. It's like I don't want your feelings to be hurt because this isn't personal. I'm genuinely telling you how I feel about the work. If you want to know my opinion and you ask me straight up, I'll give you the same exact opinion. If Martin Scorsese, for whatever wild reason, came up to me and asked me his opinion, that's what I would tell him. If Lily Gladstone came up to me and asked me, "What did you think of the movie?" I would say that it was all right. I feel like the representation was a little off, for my opinion, and I would go into it. I shouldn't feel obligated. I feel like Native people have a mindset of scarcity, for rightfully so. Have a mindset of scarcity when it comes to Native representation in film and television. That they're like, "Hey, you can't talk bad about that because it's all we got." No, that's not right at all. That's my opinion. And it's okay for you to like this movie. I don't know how many times I have to say that. It's okay for you to like this movie. It is a good movie. But I just don't like the idea that like, hey, we worked really hard on this. Hey, I know someone that was on this movie and that it's not a bad movie. You can't say that. Like hell I can. If I don't feel the representation advances the positive perception, the accurate representation, the like real perception of who native people are, then I'm gonna call a spade a spade. And that's my opinion. And I feel like people appreciate that follow the show, that listen to my opinions. I feel like that's welcomed. So that's my opinion. So question, most Hollywood um movies and shows aren't made with a native audience in mind, so all these compromises are to be expected, especially when they stop to lecture the audience. I agree. I agree. I feel like a movie like this could be made, but it wouldn't have been at this stage. It wouldn't have been to this level. Certainly wouldn't have had this budget. Do you feel positive about the state of native representation in movies and film in front of and behind the camera? Yeah, I mean, as much bitching as I'm doing right now, like the state of affairs is great. I'm complaining about a movie that Martin Scorsese directed. Like we got some pretty good problems right now. Just because it wasn't good doesn't mean we can't get better. Like this is the beginning. Like you have Prey, you had Jane Myers was an executive producer on a massive movie, a sci-fi movie. You have Killers of the Flower Moon. You have Lily Gladstone, who's potentially going to get Oscar buzz for this, and she probably will. She probably will get nominated for Best Actress. Like it's great. I think it just lends itself to get to the point where we want to be, where we have more. I think it's always going to happen. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where people are just going to wash their hands of it and say, "Okay, I'm done telling native stories." Because there's just a fascination of individuals wanting to tell stories of looking into another person's culture. Of like, "Ooh, that's a good story. I should tell that." And that's never going to stop. I don't think that's ever going to stop. Someone is just going to be able to look into somebody's culture, either black, Latino, native, and any culture, and just say, "Ooh, that looks like a good story to tell." And they just go in, take what they need enough to like form a story, a plot, develop characters. They're going to cast it, write it, get money behind it, and go from there. And then just make it. That's it. That's always going to happen. But what can happen is we can get to a point where when somebody does that, we're like, oh, that was corny. That wasn't. That didn't feel right. Perfect example is on TikTok. It's been going up recently. There's this guy. He reviews like it's like an honest, like slap in the face review for Save the Last Dance. There's a white guy that wrote that script, and when you show the black dialogue in that movie and you break it down, you see how corny it is. You're like, that what is that? When you actually like slow it down and you see what they're saying, you're like, no one from these communities actually wrote this. And I feel like I want to get to that point with Native people. Right now, there people don't know the truth of who we are outside of our communities. So it's gonna rightfully be like that. Like that's where I would like to get to where when people who are non-native make make content with natives in it, that it looks corny. That it's very clear they're like, wow, you really didn't consult any natives on this, or you don't know what you're talking about. But right now, there's no way to tell to the average viewer, anyway. I feel like the best representation is just in documentary form, and even then, it could still be swayed. But like, try like Navajo Police Class 57. That's out there right now. That's authentic representation because it's just telling what's happening today. And it's not supernatural. I'm sure there's some skinwalker stuff that they allude to in the show, but it's not hyperbole. It's not fiction. So another question, there always could be more natives behind the camera. Someday I'd like to see more natives doing regular acting roles. I agree. So that question or that comment goes to me. One of my favorite thing, well, not me, goes to Wes Studi. Something I said a long time ago, one of my previous episodes. One of my favorite things Wes Studi has ever done is, well, really two of them. He technically played like a weird native off character in Mystery Men, but when he played the Sphinx, he was a Mexican wrestler. That was his backstory. He was not a native person. He was just ethnically ambiguous. Same thing in Heat when he was Al Pacino's uh partner. He was just an ethnically ambiguous dude. Wes Studi has talked about Heat, that role in particular, that he couldn't believe that he wasn't cast in a role where he was wearing the leather and feathers, as he likes to call it. He was just another dude walking around everyday life. At no point in Mystery Men or Heat did anyone put a feather in his hair, put face paint on him. He did have like a native weird cadence, like spiritual wisdom cadence to his character in Mystery Men when he plays the Sphinx, but he's not a native person. He's not a native stereotype. So I got another question by E Society Podcast. People always come at me when I dislike something that they love dealing with native representation. Yeah, it's gonna happen. I think even like Wind Talkers, that's a Navajo movie. That's a terrible movie. But I like it because there's Navajos in it, and that's okay. It's okay to like bad movies. It's okay to like bad movies. I think as long as you understand what you're looking at. I think I like it because that was the first time I've ever seen an entire theater full of Navajos in a non-native town. I saw Wind Talkers the day that it opened, along with like 200 other Navajo people that piled into the theater. Two screens. They had to make two screens for it for the opening showing because that many Navajos wanted to see this movie. And I just have so much nostalgia and glee. And when I look back on it, it just makes me happy. And then I watch the movie, I'm like, God, this is terrible. What were they thinking? This is a terrible movie. But it's okay. It's not a good movie, but it holds a good place in my heart. It's okay to have those. It's okay to call things out for not being good. And it's okay to change your opinion on movies. Like you watch Smoke Signals now and it feels corny, but that's good. It should feel corny. It should feel outdated because it is outdated. That movie's 25, 30 years old. It should feel like, man, that's not who we are. All right. So someone said if something is bad, it has to be called out or else it can't be improved. I completely agree with that statement. If you don't call a spade, it's never going to change. You really have to call something out as you see it. Even if you're, I mean, I feel like my opinion, I have enough evidence to validate my opinion. Someone said, I know you want to tell more native stories in the present day, but what about historical traumas focused on AIM or Alcatraz occupation? So I like that. AIM is different, in my opinion. AIM and Alcatraz occupation, you know why? Because those are resistance stories. Those stories attribute those stories end to like here's where native people are today, as opposed to history where it's like look what happened to these Indians. Not like look what happened to them. Like everything just feels like everything's happening to us and we're just at the mercy of what's happening. Very much like a manifest destiny lens. Whereas what you're talking about with AIM or Alcatraz occupation, those are very much like taking the reins and determining your own destiny despite your situation. The, why that makes me excited is that you could definitely make it from a POV of a non-native person, but you were taking the movie and you're gonna point it at these native people and say, "Look at how resilient and strong these native people are." Look instead of looking at like how look how poor these Indians are. Look at how dumb they are. Look at how little do they know. Look at how ignorant they are. No, 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 no. In those stories like that, it's very different. Someone made a comment. Robbie Benson was okay in Running Brave, but I get they had to have a big actor in to get a big release. That's one where I'm like, I'm okay with. Even like I said, Killers of the Flower Moon, I didn't like the movie just at times because there was also just dramatic retell. There was just retellings of stuff that I didn't need to see. White men were specifically had predatory behavior toward Native women because they knew that by marrying into their family, they had the ability to get their oil head rights and they could benefit financially from that. And it was all orchestrated by Robert De Niro's character. I just can't watch a movie like that and say, "Oh, I like this. This is a good movie." It's just a lot for me to unpack. It's a lot for me to sit there and watch and endure, and I just can't do it at times. But something like Running Brave, that's different. Running Brave is a great story because I met Billy Mills. He came to my school when I was in 5th grade, and he showed all of us his gold medal. So we watched Running Brave because Billy Mills was coming to our school. So, like, stuff like that, it is important it is an important story to tell. While I didn't like the movie, the delivery, it is an important story. It talks about the formation of the FBI. It talks about J. Edgar Hoover being appointed to the FBI and how he completely transformed this kind of like ragtag bullshit department into the organization that it became today. And it talks about an important reason why they came about is because of the atrocities happening with the Osage people on their land. And there was no way for anyone to do anything about it because the local law enforcement was corrupted, the local government was corrupted, and there was no solace from any of that because it was so corrupted in that community. There was no way these people were going to get out of there. And I think that's why some people look at it as a white savior movie because it's like, oh, these white people had to come from the outside and rescue them. It's like, yeah, but I don't mean they weren't rescued. It wasn't resolved. They didn't get fixed. So I don't know. I think it's just it all depends on the POV. You could have told this Osage story from the POV of the native people, and I think it would have been a story about resilience. It would have been a story um, about wit. It would have been a story about resilience for sure, because you would have showed like how did you manage to survive all of this? You could make the argument that lesser people would have definitely perished. Lesser people would have lost all their head rights to the oil. But these this community is fucking strong. They managed to maintain it with like women being the ones who were being targeted, and they found ways to advocate for themselves. They found ways to protect themselves, but that this movie didn't show that. It showed very little of that, I should say. It tried to show it. So, I did not watch Echo Trailer. I was hoping we could watch it here. I tried sharing a YouTube video or sharing my screen to watch a YouTube video, and we were unable to do that, unfortunately. But something interesting, you guys have been, sorry, saying you guys, you all have been looking at my ugly mug for the past 49 minutes. I'm going to share my screen. Let's go look at something right here. I am not gonna say whether this is right or wrong, but this is a thing about pretendians. Whoa, here we go. So I don't know if anyone has seen this stuff about Buffy St. Marie. There's been unfortunately some stuff that have come out. I say unfortunately, just because you deduced for yourself. Buffy St. Marie has like ancestry allegations. The One of the Canada main news outlets went and kind of did a ancestry lineage investigation into her, and basically said like she's not native based on her history. And I show that because I think it's important for people to talk about pretendians. I think it's important for the work to continue. The problem is you get people involved that have nefarious intent, that see an opportunity to drag somebody's name through the dirt, and I think it's wrong. My opinion, standing, I think Buffy St. Marie's identity at this point doesn't matter. Sasheen Littlefeather had controversy about her uh shortly right at the end of life, and I don't think it matters because both of these people, you can make the argument, did not necessarily profit from. Yeah, I mean they got some acclaim from being native. Let's just strip whether the fact it's right or wrong, whether they are native or not, away from it. I think you need to look at like what were they trying to accomplish by saying they were native? Did they take opportunity from native people by stating that they were native? I think all those things need to be true. And even then, it's not our place. It's a really messy thing. And I see a lot of individuals. I think if there's a Navajo person out there that is claiming to be Navajo, that is not Navajo, then that's when I feel like, hey, what family are you from? What's your clans? Where are you from? I feel like then, is your community that you come from accepting of you? I feel like that's the biggest thing too. Like Buffy St. Marie, Sasheen Littlefeather, like did the communities that they say they come from accept them? I think that's the most important thing. That's the most important thing, in my opinion. Did they claim them? Did they say, yes, this is one of our people? Then if that's what happens, then who cares? Who cares? And I feel like Buffy's community she comes from accepts her, and that to me that's all that matters. Same thing with Sasheen Littlefeather. Who cares? Because the work that they did for Native people was different. This isn't a Elizabeth Warren situation where she gets heralded as the first person of color faculty at Harvard, and she used her Indian identity, supposed Indian identity, to gain admittance to Harvard, to gain positions because she was identifying as a person of color or descendant from people of color. Is very different, and it's just so nuanced that it's a difficult thing. But I just, I saw a lot of commotion on Twitter or X, on social media, about Buffy St. Marie, and I still consider Buffy St. Marie to be the only person, the only Native person that won an Oscar, because she won for Officer and a Gentleman for singing "Up Where We Belong," "Lift Us Up Where We Belong." So that's how I feel about it. I think she's still the first Native person to legit win an Oscar. When it comes to Echo, so someone had a question: when will Indigenous Talk release the next Reservation Dogs review? I don't know. Patrick is working on that one. We'll get there. Um, Something cool happened on Indigenous Talk. We definitely have a story to tell. We interviewed Sterling Harjo, so that's coming eventually, and that's going to be fun. So hopefully Sterling Harjo is on my podcast. He agreed. He said he would come onto my podcast and do an interview. So at some point soon, you should see Sterling Harjo on Native Film Talk. So someone said, I feel the same way. I only care if someone is claiming to be my tribe and they aren't, and they're making big bucks. I agree. There are pretendians who profit off my tribe. And that's what it is. It's like if you're from that tribe, you're from that native nation, and you know that person isn't from your community and they're off making a name for themselves, saying they're native, saying they're from your community. It's like, no, you're not. But it gets messy because this is where the gatekeeping gets messy. Because you have some natives who are convinced that blood quantum is the measure, that your certificate of Indian blood, that your card, your status card is the measure. And that is rooted in that's very colonially rooted in like, hey, the system that was input in place where it's destined to phase people out of existence. Like, think of it. If you can only start with 4/4 or 100% and you can only be diluted at that point, what's going to prevent you from being diluted out of into oblivion eventually? And that's the system that was put in place. Hey, put a blood quantum system in place and your tribes manage it. That's why every tribe has a different blood quantum minimum. But some people truly believe that blood quantum is a good measure, and that's how we should be gauging. Hey, what's Buffy's blood quantum? What's Sasheen Littlefeather's blood quantum? I think that's a mixture. It needs to be a mixture of things of like who are you descended from? Who's your family from? Who took care of That's why it's like does your community claim you? I think it's probably the easiest, simplest way to say like are you native? I think if that you check that box, then fine by me. Who am I, not from that community, not from that tribe, to say one way or the other if that tribe claims them, if that community claims them? It's like go pound sand. If somebody from my not from my people, not from my community doesn't claim or like says that someone from my community isn't actually native or Navajo, they can say whatever the hell they want. We know the truth. So let's see. I another comment about Buffy. I seen her first on Sesame Street when I was a kid and was happy that there was a native woman on the show singing us songs. Now I'm an old Che that finds out the truth. I don't care. She's cool. I agree because you know what else Buffy St. Marie did? She was the first person ever on television to have a positive message about breastfeeding. Buffy St. Marie in that episode that you're talking about um, talked about breastfeeding in public and attempt to destigmatize women breastfeeding in public while educating these children about who Native people were casually. And I thought that was significant because, I mean, that was women's rights. Her presence was there to advocate for women's rights, but also to advocate for representation of who Native people are today, not who they think we are. Last comment I've seen other natives on social media, but they're urbanites who have no ties to their tribe or clan and have to learn about the culture on their own. Yeah, I think there's slivers of truth to that. Um, I think the same perceptions happen to people who are on the res, same views. Someone made a comment. Devery Jacobs is in the Echo trailer. Yeah, Devery Jacobs is in Echo. I'm excited for the native people, the actors that are in it. I'm not necessarily excited for the show, but I haven't seen the most recent trailer, so maybe next week I'll talk about the trailer. And last comment, a tribe will accept you as one of their relatives without a card, but possibly won't accept you as a card holding relative, at least in my case, because Mikasuke has a half rule as far as set as the set government. So it sounds like and I agree. So that is a great point. Just because you meet the blood quantum minimum doesn't mean shit. And for one tribe, you could be quarter um native, but it could be from the wrong side of the family. And so therefore you're not native by letter of the law. That's why blood quantum I think is messy. That's why you can't be a gatekeeper and be like, "What's your status card say?" Because these systems are meant to phase us out of existence. And these systems don't favor native people and they pit us against each other because they say, "Hey, you make it a black and white issue on paper." And then all of a sudden, "Hey, you can't qualify now because you're a quarter, but on your dad's side, and it has to be from your mom's side, or vice versa." And I have a friend who is technically half Apache, but because it's from 2 different bands of Apache, he doesn't qualify. No, no, no. It's 2 both of his parents are a quarter from 2 different bands of Apache. So, but to me, I'm like, okay, this guy's at least a quarter Apache. Both of his parents are a quarter. He's a quarter. Makes sense. He's native. He grew up in the community, but just by dilution, the fractions that they give, he's not native. He's not enrolled. He can't go to the IXS facility there in town because he's not from that community. He doesn't meet the minimums. Like, it's BS. How can you be born and raised in a community? Your mom and dad are both from Apache communities. You were born and raised, went to the school district K through 12. You still live in the community. Everybody knows you're from that community. Everyone in that community knows you. Everyone probably just thinks you're Apache. But when it comes to actually reaping some of the benefits that were set up, what few benefits there are, you can't do that. So it's wild. But that's why I'm saying, like, it's messy with pretendians and stuff. And I also bring this up because it just stigmatizes and perpetuates um bad data, bad information. You have like just non-native people reading that of like, what? They already don't even know who Indians are, native people are. Then you see stuff like that in the news, like Michelle Latimer, Sasheen Littlefeather, Buffy St. Marie, the prominent people who, like, well, one, I didn't know they were native, and they were not native this whole time. I've never seen a native in my life. And you couple that with people taking a swab and sending it off in a piece of paper in an envelope and then getting it back and saying, hey, I'm 10% Indian. I'm 10% Native American. Where's my casino money? Where's my resource money? And then they see Killers of the Flower Moon and they're like, hey, they get money. They get head right. There's oil money in being Indian. I want some of that. How does that work? And they just start asking ignorant questions. So I don't know, people. Pretty wild. It's tough to be native sometimes. A lot of times it's awesome. But I appreciate everyone joining the stream. Any questions or comments, drop it in the chat. But I think we pretty much took the whole time just talking about Killers of the Flower Moon and talking about kind of this Buffy St. Marie stuff going on. But really, it was just a more like to talk about the state of like the grossness behind trying to fact check who's from what tribe as Native people. I think it is both a good and a bad thing. It's really hard to say it's one or the other. It's important to make sure that Native people are actually getting the opportunities that are allotted for them, that are set aside for them. But it's such a messy thing to say who gets to decide who's a Native or not. If we try to go by what the government says, I told a few stories about how it could be messed up trying to say that. And if we try to go, I don't know. That's why I say the best measure is to say, does your community claim you? That should be all that matters. Someone made a question or made a comment. Do Navajos have tribal ID cards? I don't need one. Sometimes people always pull theirs out to prove they're what tribe they are. It makes me laugh. I know some tribes have actual ID cards that can be used for like in place of a driver's like for like actual identification, like government identification. I have a few friends who have those cards. I don't think Navajos are one of them. We still have the piece of paper. We still have the certificate Indian blood. We don't have cards. As far as I know. Another Navajo person could come in. But when I went to the census office to get my boys their CIBs, I didn't see like, hey, come get your card. It was just like, come get your, you had to get a new CIB. All right, everybody. I think that's going to wrap it up for me. But let me start wrapping this up. Some of the things that we've been doing recently, I've been on with Indigenous Talk. Go over and check those out. Indigenous Talk is a new podcast started by Patrick, is a Navajo. It's a fantastic podcast where we just kind of goof off and talk about reservation dogs, but he's taking it in a different direction now that the show is over. And on my side, I am going to do a review on Killers of the Flower Moon because I saw it. I'm also going to do a just a recap of Reservation Dogs and just talk about my feelings on it. I do have a video. I kind of want to do a few React videos in researching for some of the videos. Like, there's just some gross stereotypical stuff online. Like, if you ever watch a 10-hour loop of anything, it could be meditation music, it could be like I like to find 10-hour loops of a single song, one to get me in the zone, basically. And in the course of doing that, of like trying to find 10-hour loops on like to help you with anxiety, to help you with sleep, to help you with focus, you'll find relaxation stuff and it'll be like a 10-hour loop of native spiritual music. And it's just that. And the comments of these people when you're looking at this as a non-native person, you're just like, these people are closing their eyes and thinking they're going somewhere, listening to these flutes and these like soft drums. And they're not attributed to any native artists. It's just this random flute music. It might not even be a native person playing the flute, but it's just very much like it's like what is going on. So I plan to do some YouTube videos on that because I think that also needs to be out there. Someone in the stream once said if you don't call it out, it doesn't get changed. I agree. If you don't call this out, then native people think like or non-native people will think, "Oh, this is okay. Native people love this." No one's complaining. Very much like the Redskins. Like every native I've ever talked to, they said it's honoring them. Nobody's ever said anything bad about it. So someone said during Halloween I watched Creep Show 2 had an old Navajo man speaking Navajo, but it also had a hardcore red faced guy in one of their shorts. Yeah, I remember that one. Creep Show 2 is a great one. So definitely yeah, gosh. You know what's funny? The old Dark Wind has legitimate Hopi and Navajo spoken in it by Hopi and Navajo people. At no point does Lou Diamond Phillips try to speak fluent Navajo. Maybe he does. I don't think he's ever tried. Maybe like one word, but he never tries to say a whole sentence or anything. I think in that one, it's weird. Maybe because it's more low budget and the person who has control of the film has more autonomy with what goes into it, gives more freedom to the actors. But that's more accurate than the regular show Dark Winds, in my opinion, because it actually is shot on the Navajo res. It's actually shot in Tuba City, where I'm from, parts of it anyway. So I don't know. So someone said hi from Europe, from Iceland. Hey, nice. Thank you for having your podcast earlier this time. I saw Killers of the Flower Moon and loved it, but totally get you. I'm torn myself. Would have to wanted to see more of the Osage point of view. Yeah, and that's okay. I think as a non-native person, and especially someone who is not from America, I think it's okay to watch the movie and be like, "Man, I didn't know that. I wonder what else happened." That's to me the biggest positive from this movie is that it evokes curiosity for for the audience. What else? Like I hope it causes people to go to Google or Bing if you're one of those psychopaths and type in Osage people and just look it up and find out who people are today. That's what I hope happens. I hope people are curious and they go look like what do Osage people look like? What do they look like now? What do they do today? What do their tribe look like? What's their tribal makeup? I really hope it just gets people curious. So, and someone said I knew nothing about what happened in Oklahoma at the time before the movie came out. Same here. I'm native, but there's 560 plus native tribes federally recognized. There's so many stories that have not been told, and that's why I'm okay with the movie. Like as a story, it's good. It's like not quite like Wolf of Wall Street, where it's not that radical, but it's definitely on the side of like, man, this is really the stuff that these people did is really messed up. And I'm okay with the story. It's just the native representation in it I'm not okay with. The story's okay. The story's good. And it's just at times the native representation I just didn't like it. And that's my whole lens on this show. You all aren't watching me because I'm reviewing a Scorsese film. You're here because you want to hear me talk about the representation in it. And from a representation standpoint, I don't feel like it did much. I don't feel like it did good. But the movie itself is a good movie. It's okay. I still give it a tomato. It's still good. But as far as native representation, it's not for me. All right, everybody. Someone made a comment. Oklahoma was territory. Then the government changed its laws and the land was taken away again. Yeah, it was used to be Native America, used to be Indian country, and now it's not. Now they reverted back. So, all right, everybody. This was a great stream. I appreciate all the engagement. Appreciate everyone coming on the live. Remember to like, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next week. We'll talk about Echo Trailer. And yeah, have a good one, everybody.